In the Deep Dark Mountain, a Broken Realms short story. "It's dead squinty in here, isn't it?" said Slorgo, banging his immense head against the stalactite for the third time in as many minutes. "Can't hardly see me wounds." "That's the point, idiot," growled Brogruff, the largest and oldest of the Merg brothers. His gravelly voice sent rock dust trickling down from the cave roof. "What's the matter? Your head still on sideways after that Goldie with the shiny hammer got you?" "Maybe a bit," admitted Slorgo. They had all taken a beating in some form or another and had nothing to show for it but fresh crops of injuries. He pulled an arrow out of the meat of his shoulder, made of metal instead of wood. The projectile let fly a little crackle of electricity as he removed it, along with a spurt of blood. Bloody Goldies always had to go one better than the others. Slorgo spat a wad of thick saliva on his palm and slapped it over the wound to seal it. "That was the whole point of spending the best part of the day stacking all them bodies and slabs and whatnot to shore up the entrance," said Brogruff. "Get us a bit of peace. Give us some catch our breath. Heal up a bit." A grunt came from the back of the massive cave. "Run away, more like." Mangor was just visible as a hulking shape. Sat with his elbows on his knees and his head bowed. The young war stomper had been in a foul mood ever since the light of the bad moon had slid behind the clouds, and the crazy glint in his eye had faded altogether. His ankles and feet were a right mess, hacked near to the bone by the red-haired stunties during the disastrous attack on the Tusk Vault to the south. Slorgo made a face. He had to admit his little brother, if you could call someone large enough to flatten a horse with one hand, little, had a point. "We shouldn't be sulking in here," he muttered, shaking his head. "We was born to smash walls down, not spend a whole day building them up so we can hide like a bunch of weaklings." "What was that, Slorgs?" said Brogruff, his eyes narrow, his voice heavy with malice. "Nothing," said Slorgo, shaking his head. He heard that sound again, then. He heard it whenever he cocked his head just so. Thump, 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 it went. Something big, sounded like. Stooping right down and putting his hands flat on the ground, he pressed his ear to the cold, rough stone. "Here," he said. "You hear that, lads?" Mangor just shrugged, turning away. Brogruff growled, "Not going on about that bloody thumping sound again, are ye? You really can't hear it? Probably the sound of your thick noggin bumping against the roof, you lanky git. I'll give you a thumping if you're so keen on it." "Nah," said Slorgo. "It's more like—" There was a colossal boom. Slorgo felt like he had been punched sideways by a fist as big as a house. His eyes stung like crazy and he scraped up his arm, something fierce against the cave wall. But it was his head that hurt the most, his ears ringing in a thin whine despite the feeling like they were stuffed in invisible gunk. A bit of light came. Then, from the corner of the cave, something was coming through. Lots of somethings, in fact, all muscly and fat at the same time. He picked up a boulder and lobbed it at them. His aim was off. The rock exploded above the gap and things had blasted against the wall, but they shrugged it off. Ogres. They'd pull you down if there were enough of them. He'd even heard tales of them chomping fallen Gargants whilst they were still alive. They were smallish in comparison to a Gargant, but not as little as peepsqueaks, and big enough to carry. Another boom. This time he felt sharp pains in his shins, big enough to carry those metal shooters the pipsqueaks like to make. The one Gargants knew to watch out for. Cannons. Brogruff's face loomed through the murk, hideous enough to shock him by his senses. His older brother had been lightning zapped up and down at the Tusk Vault, burning him from head to toe, and it didn't make him any prettier. "Get him, you idiot!" he bellowed as he stomped past, swinging his club hard down to smash two of the cannon-toting ogres into bloody mush. Another explosion. Something whizzed past Slorgo's face. He saw more of the fat little things pushing through the hole they'd blown open in the cave wall. There were a lot of them. They had green skin stained with soot, rank muscle and flab lit by little fire sticks they had been using to light their cannons. By their wide eyes and wider grins, the ogres were enjoying themselves. Some had little grot mates that were rolling barrels towards Brogriff across the stony floor. Given the fact that the barrels were hissing, with ropes of fire poking out of them, they were not full of good stuff. Mangor loomed out of the darkness and dropped a slab on them, squashing the barrels flat in a blaze of fire and catching the ogre's leg into the bargain. The little git dropped his cannon, squealing like a stuck boar. Mangor picked up the metal gun thing and lobbed it at the thick press of ogres coming through the gap. It hit the ogre boss at the front, rebounding off the massive green plate of armor his gut and staggering him for a moment. He roared in anger, waving his big spiky mace for his mates to charge. More cannon fire. The smell of gun smoke and blood was cloying and thick, so much so that Slorgo felt it stinging his throat. He could just make out something big in the press. A couple of wagons, it looked like, each pulled by a Rhinox, each with a truly impressive cannon mounted on the back. Slorgo raised a foot high and stomped one of the eaters, rushing at him as he moved in to get a closer look. The little thug burst nicely, his cannon rolling away with a dull clank. Another explosion. This time Slorgo went down. They all did. The cave entrance, a moment ago blocked by the mega Gargants' thick wall of basalt slabs and boulders, yawned wide. Pushing through it was a huge, horned bull skull, so big that it might have taken all three of the brothers' Merg to lift it, mounted on a colossal battering ram. Slorgo could just about pick out the teams of Troggoths and Gargants that had been pushing it into position through the dust of pulverized rock. And there, standing atop the thing, was the king of the orcs, Gordrakk. Even Slorgo knew his name. "Enough of that bloody racket," boomed the Orc king. "Enough mucking about with mountains and dust old vaults. We got a proper fight lined up. In the open this time, you lot." At this, he waved at one of the toothy axes, a gesture that took in not only the Mergs, but also cave-dwelling ogres that stood stupefied in awe. "And I mean all of you. You're coming with me. We're headed east. We've got a city to smash." The raucous cheer was taken up by those behind him, spreading and growing so loud that it echoed throughout the open cave. Even the ogres joined in, slinging their cannons and emerging into the light to get a better look at the titanic battering ram outside the cave. Slorgo felt strange, vital energy buzzing in his veins. Standing up to his full height, he could see a sea of greenskins that stretched to the limits of his vision. He smiled, cold mountain air whistling through his teeth, and then laughed, high on the thought of crushing an entire city under his stomping feet. Those pipsqueak humans were going to get the kicking they so richly deserved. Alright friends, let's have a quick chat about that. I absolutely love this for a variety of reasons. Okay, one, I love it when we get to see factions talk that we don't normally. So for example, like just the literal dialogue of how, a trio of Gargants all chat with one another. It's very interesting to kind of get a sense of how they communicate, what their, language limits are, that kind of stuff. That was very interesting to me. Fun fact, I believe these are the brothers that you can take as part of a battalion. Like there's 3 of them, at least there was at one point, where you could take a trio of Gargants and all of a sudden you have yourself a little army, or at least a mercenary option. And what we see here, I think, is a really cool little insight, and this is honestly what these little short stories are perfect for, is just kind of giving us just a brief bit of insight into how different factions interact. Okay, so we have 3 Mega Gargants, they're chilling out, trying to rest and recover. They just had a bad run-in. It sounds like at a Storm Vault, so probably Stormcast. Obviously Stormcast, they pointed that out, but, they're kind of chilling, relaxing, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of ogres start smashing and ruining their day. My assumption from reading the story is that the ogres were just attacking them to eat them, basically, and then Gordrakk showed up and was like, "Hey everybody, quit being an idiot. You're not fighting amongst each other. you're part of the destruction, Grand Alliance. You're fighting with me. We're taking this party to a city, okay? So that's, all of those individual elements of seeing how ogres react with mega Gargants, or sons of Behemoth rather, and then seeing how Gordrakk reacts and interacts with anything else from destruction. I've said for a long time, I want Gordrakk to be the big bad, kind of like how Death has Nagash and Order has a bunch of heroes now that are all really big, but kind of like that big centerpiece dude. And this is him doing that, right? It's him showing up a certain dominance and telling you, like, I'm the big prophet of the wall. Like, Gorka Morka is my friend. We're gonna go have some fun. Most notably, though, are two things that get me extremely excited for the next Broken Realms book, or at least, the series as a whole, and that is what he broke into that cave with. Now, if you're not familiar and you didn't pick it up on one of the other side stories, essentially, when storm vaults were revealed, okay, and there's these big treasure troves of weapons all over the place, one of the things that Gordrakk grabbed, was the skull of a giant god beast, like a ram style god beast. And now he has that attached to some kind of crude, ramming device, where basically he's using that as both a weapon and a tool to get into places. He just straight up blew out a wall that, barrages of cannons from the Maw tribes are trying to get through. And then, he's like, okay, we're going to go see a city. So my understanding of his plan right now is that he's going to grab this huge horn, or, this skull for ramming, turn it into a weapon, and break his way into the city of Excelsius, which is the home of the Knights Excelsior. Now, that is my understanding of the plan. I could be wrong. It could be a different storm host. It's just to my memory, that's exactly what it was. But the idea here, regardless of the city he's attacking, he's taking destruction's fight to the forces of order. And that's important because largely throughout most of Age of Sigmar lore, destruction armies are very reactive, right? The good guys from order need to come into an area and, they get attacked by orcs, or, they get, that kind of stuff where it's always very reactive. You have to go into their area to be interacting with them. But in this, it's like, no. Now we're taking the fight to them. And I think that is an incredible angle for Destruction Armies 1, but 2, that Gordrakk is the head of it. So I hope we get some awesome stories about the fall of many Order cities that are just rife with all kinds of cool storytelling and art. But I would love to know your thoughts, friends. What do you think of this scene here as far as like he's, actively recruiting and demonstrating the power of his new weapon and an army behind him? I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you like to see out of a book or a battle scene that involves Gordrakk leading some grand war? Let me know in the comments down below. Look forward to hearing and seeing your thoughts. Thank you guys so much. Look forward to catching you in my next Age of Sigmar story. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.